Hello, good people and listeners of the MMA Podcast. It is the MMA Podcast. It's September 22nd, 2016. A lot to break down. We weren't able to do a show last week, so we're going to be talking a little bit about UFC 203. What a wacky card that was, but we won't spin our wheels too long on that because it was a while ago. Talk a little bit about Poirier versus Johnson over in Hidalgo, Texas. Had some surprising finishes as Derek Brunson and Michael Johnson both get the first round KOs. Bunch of news to talk about, fight announcements. Old Chael going to Bellator. We have a UFC card in Brasilia this Saturday to break down. I'm ready. Let's do it.
You're listening to the MMA Podcast.
That's right. It is the MMA Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. September 22nd, the MMA Podcast. I don't know, 183, 184 now. We got a lot to break down. And again, sorry for not being around last week. Your boy was bedridden with a terrible virus, but the human body, the immune system, it is an amazing thing. I kicked the virus's ass. Still a little congested. For that, I apologize. But we are back, joined by my brother from another mother in Palm Desert, Cali. He's on Twitter at Sweet Pappy Jones. P-Money, what it do?
Oh, Jake, it is a pleasure to be back with you here, sir. I'm in the echoey confines of the P-Money compound. Got some big things in the works over here. So I'm sure the acoustics are just going to be fantastic. We've had some fantastic fight action in the meanwhile while we haven't been around. So definitely looking forward to breaking it down with you, Jake, and breaking it down for all the good peeps that are listening with us.
And yeah, we weren't around last week, so I wanted to quickly just talk about UFC 203. Don't want to spin our wheels too much on that because it was a whole 12 days ago. But what a weird card that was, man. Just typical in typical Cleveland fashion. It was just like especially those last three fights. Like first we get a CM Punk fight, which, I mean, you know, we all knew what was going to happen. And then Mickey Gall takes the mic and like says the word fuck 32 times and calls out Sage Northcutt and his spiky hair. And then we get probably the weirdest fight, which Fabricio Verdum starts off with like a flying sidekick. Then Travis Brown calls a timeout because his bone is sticking out of his finger. And the ref actually gives him a timeout, which, look, if you're a fighter and you need to call a timeout, that's the end of the fight. That's a TKO. You're done. But somehow the fight went on, and Verdum won a one-sided decision, and there was a scuffle between him and Edmund Tarverdian after the fight. He gets kicked. And then the main event, Stipe scores a first-round KO, and Overeem claims he got a tap, and Rogan runs the footage back during the post-fight interview, and they watch it, and there's no tap, and it's so cringeworthy and awkward and strange, and it was just a very strange card overall, man.
Yeah, it certainly was. It did not lack for action. The people who enjoy their sour grapes got to see CM Punk get the shit beat out of him. He certainly gave a great post-fight speech, maybe a little more articulate than Mickey Gall. Pretty decent fight for one of the fighters in a losing mixed martial arts competition. But yeah, that was a wild card. Fabricio Verdum, that was I loved his entire performance through that fight, after that fight. Not a huge Edmund Tarverdian fan, just So seeing him getting front kicked after running his mouth, talking shit to a fighter for no viable or logical reason, like there's no reason for him to be talking shit to Fabricio Verdum. Everything he did essentially within the confines of that fight was 100% legal. So, yeah, front kick him up. I don't give a fuck. That was fantastic. He did seem to say something about like all the Croatian fans or something like that. I believe he said it in Portuguese, so I didn't catch up what that was. I was very interested. I don't know if anybody has a translation, but I was very curious as to what that was. And then Miocic versus Overeem. I mean, I felt like that was a weird fight. Like, Alistair Overeem had a solid knockdown on Miocic very early in the fight.
Yeah.
And then he starts fighting like he's not a K1 Grand Prix champion. He's throwing these like big looping wild punches. He's running away all the time. Um, I don't know if he was like trying so hard to avoid the takedown and ground and pound, but I mean, he was having success with the striking. I found that performance incredibly perplexing. Just sitting back and watching it, and then when you watch him get taken down by Stipe Miocic, he offers little to no. He's not trying to recover position or anything like that. He just lays in guards up, and gets knocked out. Like he has no clue what to do on the ground or something like that. It was just a very yeah, definitely a weird card. Had some good action, but yeah, definitely. Yeah, a lot of interesting stuff going on that one.
And it's wild, after the whole thing, nobody is talking about Jimmy Rivera, who went in there and looked very impressive against the Uriah Faber, who only loses to the cream of the crop, wins a decision, gives him his first losing streak of his career. Jimmy Rivera, that is a wide dude, and that's a dude I think we see have a very successful UFC career.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to say we did a podcast before 203,
We did.
and I also want to say I picked Jimmy Rivera to win that fight.
He was the favorite.
Yeah, he was the favorite. I was quite surprised. I mean, Uriah Faber, his only non-championship fight loss was to Frankie Edgar. So for him to not be a favorite in a non-title fight was very odd. But I mean, hey, we saw that was certainly well justified. Yeah, Jimmy will be a terror for most of these people at 135. Man, he is just a beast. He's got all the fundamentals. He's a young, hungry fighter. Man, he's got a great record, and he's kept it going since he's gotten into the UFC too. Definitely, fantastic victory for him.
I'm starting to hear word that CM Punk might fight again in the UFC. Well, what do you think about that?
Is he going to take on the reporter that Mickey Gall also beat up?
I think he might actually. I think that might be the fight that they're going to make seriously.
I mean, no, honestly, that is legitimately the only thing they could do that would make any bit of sense. They are both 0-1, and both of those fights being in the UFC. It's either that or they get on the horn and see what James Toney's up to. See if they want to, put on a little catch weight. Old CM Punk versus James Toney. He's 0-1 in MMA in the UFC as well. But yeah, Michael Jackson may be a little more CM Punk speed, and vice versa.
I'm thinking, is there a fourth guy we can think of and make like a 4-man disgraced pro record of 0-1 all on the UFC? We got Tony, Michael Jackson, CM Punk. If we can think of one more, we're golden. But I can't think of
Set up a little tournament, little one night tournament.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
But yeah, what else can we take from that? Stipe, I mean, I feel like we don't have many current champions who have actual title defenses right now. You have Nunes with 0, McGregor with 0, of course, Mighty Mouse with like 50. Who else? You got Alvarez with 0, Woodley with 0, Bisbing was 0. So right now, the only champions who actually can claim that they have a title defense under their belt, literally, are Joanna, Mighty Mouse, Dominic, Cormier, and Miocic now defeating Alistair Overeem. Who do you think Miocic gets next? I'm hearing New Year's we're going to see Fabricio versus Kane, and Stipe is going to take a little bit of time off, and the winner of Kane versus Verdum will fight Stipe early 2017. You like that idea? I do.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's really the best way to do it. I'm not sure what Derek Lewis is slated for, who his next opponent is going to be, but I mean, I want to say
Still a couple fights away.
he is, but I want to say he's got one of the longer winning streaks in the UFC heavyweight division, and I want to say he's coming off of a fairly high profile win as well. So I
Derek
mean,
Lewis currently 10th in the heavyweight division. He is on a win streak against, most recently, Roy Nelson. Before that, Gabe Gonzaga, Damian Grabowski, Victor Pesta. 4-fight win streak since losing to Sean Jordan back June 2015. So that's a decent streak. Unfortunately, none of those guys he's beaten are top 10. But definitely give him shoot. I mean, you've got a bunch of bangers in that lower top 10 area. You got Travis Brown, Andrei Arlovsky, Mark Hunt. He just beat a banger in Big Country. So we'll see what happens. Big Country, I actually didn't even realize he's fighting this Saturday against Bigfoot. So yeah,
I did not realize that either.
We'll be breaking that card down a little bit toward the end of the show. Anything else on UFC 203? A card that I think I'm going to remember for all the wrong reasons.
I think that'll just about do it for that one. Definitely a wacky card.
And then we had UFC Hidalgo, which I actually saw this stat tweeted out today. Not a very good stat for the UFC. UFC Hidalgo was on Fox Sports 1, and somebody got the percentages of what percent of the broadcast were commercials, what percent of the broadcast were actual fighting. Commercials took up 41.5% of the broadcast. Actual fighting, 16%, less than half. So you literally, if you watched that card, you saw more than twice as much commercials than you did fight time. How insane is that?
Yeah, no, it's really insane, and it is one of the bigger problems with a UFC fight card. I mean, I love watching a UFC fight card. That's, hell, if I have a Saturday with nothing to do, I'll take the 7 fucking hours it takes to watch an entire card because the pacing is just atrocious as shit. I don't understand it. Now, Glory Kickboxing, Jake, I know you and I have talked about it before. The pacing of that promotion is just ideal. Be it live, be it on TV, the way that they present it, the way that they do it live. I mean, and especially live, those fights are non-stop. The second the fighters are walking out of the ring in a Glory Kickboxing fight, they are announcing the next fighters for the next bout, and the next fight is going in probably like 5 minutes or less. They do not. UFC really could do well to take a page from Glory Kickboxing's pacing. Again, it's fun to kick back and have a day and watch the fights, but I almost miss the days where it was like a 3-hour affair just in the sense, it was the biggest fights. It was um, the most hype, but you also didn't spend all fucking day watching commercials. They could do it in a format where you could have, and especially with these cards that are 12, 13 fights. Again, I hate to compare it to a completely different sport, but it is combat sports still. Um, and even Invicta has better pacing than the UFC. Almost any combat sports organization has better pacing than the UFC. It's just amazing, and it's really one of the only things that sucks if you're trying to make a fight day, and you're trying to have some friends over and trying to say, hey, you know what, we're going to put on the fights, blah blah blah, come on over to the pad, we're going to get the grill going, blah blah blah, and then it's a fight card that has like all decisions, and then uh like 40, what was it, almost 45%, over 40% of the content. And if you're watching every single fight, we're talking Fight Pass, the all the prelims, everything like that. But even just talking the, let's say Fox Sports 1 and prelims, and then whatever channel the main card may be on, that's 5 hours at least that they have carved out. And no matter how long the fights go, they're filling those with commercials. And it is just ridiculous. You don't need to carve out that much time, but they're just trying to rake in those advertising dollars, man.
They did a commercial break every 6.5 minutes. 39 ad breaks. It's getting ridiculous. The way, God, the UFC is just so transparently greedy, from treating their fighters like shit to making us watch 40 fucking commercial breaks during a show. At this point, every time Bellator makes a high profile signing, I get a smile on my face, because I've about had it with the UFC, to be completely honest. Where do we go after that? There was the card, which we bitched about the ad time. We didn't really talk about any of the results. Chaz Skelly with a nice, rushed out, drops Maximo Blanco, then hits him with the Anaconda choke, wins 19 seconds into the fight. Evan Dunham, an impressive, boring, one-sided win against Rick Glenn. Derek Brunson and Michael Johnson, like I mentioned at the top of the show, both scored knockout wins about a minute and a half into the first round. A lot of people called the Brunson KO a early stoppage. I thought it was a little early. Brunson, even though he was throwing, he didn't land any of those shots to a floor to Uriah Hall. I thought it was a good stoppage between Johnson and Poirier. Johnson getting up in Poirier's face when the fight was over, but later apologizing. Islam Makhachev looked pretty good. We had a split decision between Hohen, Carnero, and Kenny Robertson. That's about all I got from that card. What did you take from it?
Yeah, it was a solid card, and again, I think I hate to keep harping on it, but just to your point, I want to say the fight time for this entire fight card was like 2 hours, and like just barely 2 hours, like 2 hours and 1 minute. And I can almost guarantee you that was at least like a 5 hour broadcast or something. Um, but yeah, anyhow, aside from that, and that's the thing, there were quite a few. Um, there was draws, decisions all over the card. There were some good finishes. I mean, Randy Brown with the ninja choke, beating Eric Montano in the third round. Solid finish there. Bilal Muhammad with the TKO over Augusto Doyer Montano. Solid finish. I mean, there was some good action there, mostly with the main card. That was really where the best action was. I mean, as you mentioned, Chaz Skelly, I mean, he's a great grappler. He's really through and through. I mean, his wrestling and just grappling chops overall, he is super strong. Really can't be stated enough. And just like he said, the way he came out, it was like a running front kick, almost similar to the Fabricio Verdum start against Travis Brown, except Chaz Skelly seemed to just plant it right on Maximo's chest, knock him down, and he just almost fell right into that anaconda choke. And it was, I believe, the quickest technical submission in UFC history. Not the quickest submission overall. I don't know how, but people have tapped quicker. But taking just 19 seconds to completely choke a man unconscious who was previously standing ready to punch you in the face. Amazing performance from Skelly. That was fantastic. And then really for me, the Derek Brunson and Michael Johnson performances were just excellent. Brunson, I felt looked pretty dang good with that finish over Uriah Hall. And Michael Johnson definitely looked good as well. That was a solid finish for him. Uh, some pretty fun action with the Hidalgo card. More so on the main card again for me. Some decent action on the prelims though.
Very decent, very decent. Yeah, this was one where it was worth watching the prelims, all except two. We got some fun finishes on. And yeah, as far as that main event goes between Michael Johnson and Dustin Poirier, I'm gonna get bitched at by my Cajun buddies for mispronouncing his name yet again. But who next for Michael Johnson? I'm pulling up the lightweight rankings here. You know, that's a big win. Dustin had been on a run. He was ranked 7th. Now he's been knocked down to 10th. And this moves Johnson, who was 10th, up to 6th. So now he's up with Edson Barboza, Nate Diaz, Tony Ferguson, and Dos Anjos are 2 and 3, and Habib is number 1. What do you think's next for Johnson? I think he's fought a few of those guys before. Let me double check. I think he fought and beat Barboza, who is ranked 1 ahead of him. I don't know what you make next for Michael Johnson. Maybe Michael Chiesa? I don't know if Chiesa's currently got a fight. I feel like he does.
Yeah, I would have to double check on that myself. I think for Michael Johnson, I mean, hey, who knows what Nate Diaz is doing right now? There's lots of speculation as to what Conor McGregor is doing these days, but Nate Diaz, he certainly has recaptured a lot of the hype and star power that he has behind him, in spite of the fact that he did lose the rematch to Conor McGregor. He's certainly he's built his profile enough to where that's still quote unquote a money fight. Who knows? They're probably saving Nate Diaz for some bigger competition or some bigger promotion, something along those lines. But again, just the fact that he is technically coming off of a loss, and with Michael Johnson on the rise, this could potentially be a point where their careers are kind of intersecting again, if you will, or at least they potentially could be for a rematch here. But certainly not a lack of great choices for Johnson in the 155-pound division.
For sure, yeah, he's looking good over there. You have anything else for that card? We're sort of breezing through. We're testing out. You know, we've done a couple of verbose podcasts recently where we went an hour and a half, 2 hours, trying to keep it under an hour tonight. Anything else in this card before we move on to MMA news of the week?
No, definitely a solid card, but I think God damn it, we're talking about pace, and I'm just saying this was a card. It did have a lot of good action, but sometimes those commercials will just put you to sleep, man. The UFC, they are fucking themselves, and this is the MMA podcast getting back up to speed edition.
TMP back up to speed edition. You know who else getting back up to speed? 39-year-old Chael Sonnen signing a multi-year, multi-fight deal with the UFC's largest competitor, Bellator, last Thursday night. Sonnen has fought in the UFC, the WEC, a tumultuous MMA career, and the talkative, versatile fighter known for fights against Anderson Silva, John Jones. He got a 2-year suspension back about 2 years ago and announced his retirement after that positive test. Repeatedly denied interest in returning, and when asked Thursday why he took that stance, Sonnen said, "I'm a heel. Heels lie." Sonnen calling out Tito for a fight in November, says he's willing to fight at any weight, fight any opponent. It's been a shaky couple months for MMA news. We've had a lot of fights dissolve. We've had a lot of talk about the ownership passing over, a lot of negativity in the sport. But this was a news story I was very happy to see trickle down on my feed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, say what you will about Chael. As a mixed martial artist, there are few people. I mean, Chael was the original Conor McGregor in just the sense he was writing all the checks with that mouth. And I will never, ever forget in the fight with the lead up to his first fight with Anderson Silva. And he was talking all that good shit about how he was going to just beat up Anderson Silva, this, that, and the other. And I was like, bro, I was just watching you do kind of iffy in the WEC really recently. And he came in there and, man, he put it all on the line, was this close to doing it. And ever since then, I think that was where the American Gangster was really born. And I had to give him props. He beat up the best of all time, like nobody had beat him up before. In spite of it being a losing effort, he did back up a lot of the talk that his mouth was doing. A lot of ground to cover tonight, but let's.
Pardon me. Keep on going. I'm just queuing up a interview he did at Bellator 161.
Oh yeah. No, dick move. No, pardon me.
Start.
No, but Chael. No, Chael is a fantastic MMA personality. He brings the views, and he certainly seems to put the butts in seats.
We got a lot.
Clicks on the website, all that good stuff.
No, just be
very,
a dick.
Yeah, no, now you absolutely are. Yes. No, I appreciate it. We love you, Jakey. But no, it's going to be great to see the American Badass. And I mean, the persona that he brings. And he brings it in the cage as well. That is one thing. He does not bullshit. He comes forward and he tries to put it on you. He's a sticky wrestler. He'll get on you and he'll just punch your face in while holding you down. And that's his game plan. And he's made a good career doing it to people. So it'll be great to see him bringing that to Viacom, man, and talk about someone that could really bring some eyes. My goodness, that could really help Bellator blow up. I mean, like you said, Jake, they're signing more and more big guys now, and with Chael, oh man, that could be that certainly has to be their biggest signing yet.
Oh yeah, easily, and let's hear it from the man himself. This is Sean Grande and Jimmy Smith talking to CP on his first appearance on a Bellator broadcast.
Covered tonight, but let's start with the man of the hour, because this is the discussion right now in the MMA community. Chael Sonnen joins us here. I did not think it was possible, Chael, for anything involving you and your name to be under the radar, but this happened sort of without anybody talking about it. Bring us through the last few days and how you ended up here at Bellator.
There's only two kind of people that can keep secret. One you don't know, and the other is gangster. And if I want to keep something from you, I assure you I will.
My question for you, you've always been known as a competitor. You talked before about the itch of wanting to get back in and compete in MMA. Now that you've signed a contract, does that motivation, does that itch get worse?
Sure, absolutely. You know, sometimes you need that finish line out there. Sometimes you don't want to get up in the morning in the rain at 5 a.m. and go do the running, particularly when you're in my shoes and you're waking up wearing silk pajamas. But the work's got to be done, and I promise you, I will be ready.
A simple question everybody's asking. You've been watching the show for a while now. There's been a lot of entertainment factor, a lot of buzz about some of the athletes here in Bellator. Why Bellator for Chael Sonnen?
That was a simple question, and it came from a simple man, and I'll give you an even simpler answer. Why not Bellator? Here, write this down so maybe you can understand it and see it with your own eyes. 0 apostrophe S.
He hasn't disappointed so far.
No, not at all. Not at all.
All right, Joe, you know the story. Obviously, you're online like everybody else yesterday. A lot of conversation about drug testing. You joined the USADA pool. Bring people up to date on the results so far, and was that addressed in your Bellator contract?
Yeah, everything was fine, basically. Why don't you tell me? A lot of things lie, but I know that your eyes don't. The biggest arms in Westland, Oregon, the most powerful presence in the history of MMA, the one and only, the personality, the power, the man with the biggest arm, the man with the greatest charm, the man that does all the harm, coming to Spike TV, and for that, you're welcome.
A better question is going to be not why Chael Sonnen and Bellator, but why did it take so long, I think is what we're going to be talking about. All right, a little bit later on, we're going to talk more with this man, Chael Sonnen, because believe it or not, he's got more to say, including his target list here in Bellator now that he has arrived.
So he says he wants Tito. Is that the fight you want to see him get first? Personally, there are fights that would be fun for him in Bellator. Do I want to see him fight like a Rory McDonald? Absolutely not. What do you like seeing for old Chael coming up in the future? Because he's going to apparently have multiple fights.
Well, oh man, it's just going to be fantastic seeing him get back into mixed martial arts combat. I'm not even super familiar with Bellator's middleweight roster right now, if I'm being 100% honest. I mean, if I'm keeping it 100, I can't even tell you who Bellator's middleweight champion is right now. Do they have a middleweight champion? Do they have a 185-pound division?
I think they have a Brazilian champ currently.
And see, we're just trying to guess ethnicities at this point. We don't even know the background of the champion, or even
currently your champion is Rafael Carvalho, who took the belt last year after Brandon Halsey was stripped of the title for not being able to make weight.
Aha.
And he beat Melvin Manoff back in May. So Melvin Manoff was the last challenger for that belt.
Okay. I mean, well, there you go. So I mean, Chael, he's got a whole host of options, it seems, for him at Bellator. And I mean, saying he'll fight anybody at any weight. I mean, hey, maybe that wouldn't be a bad route.
Up at 205, Liam McGeary.
Yes, now Liam McGeary I am familiar with. He's doing some good work. God bless Liam McGeary. He's out there putting his name on the map, handling these bums. But you know what? 205 might not be a bad idea. A little fight with Tito. They're at similar stages in their career. At least, they're in the later years. And I don't think that they have ever fought before. So that would just be a fantastic fight. Only thing is, you certainly have to have a backup. Just if you're booking a fight with Tito Ortiz, you have to have a backup scheduled, and you have to be ready with that one ready to go. But I think that would be the best. I mean, that way, Chael's just returned to competition from a 2-year layoff. Just to get him back into action sooner rather than later, maybe easier for him to get into a more fit 205 as opposed to getting down to 185. So I'd go with the Tito fight. Bring him back with a bang.
Yeah, I agree there. We got a few fight announcements. We got we were going to have Cerrone Lawler. That was going to be a fun fight, but Lawler backed out for reasons unknown. I don't think we've heard officially what is wrong with Robbie Lawler, but in steps Kelvin Gastelum, which, man, a lot of people were really sour on that when the announcement was made that we were getting Gastelum. And look, I will agree, Lawler Cerrone would have been funner, but Gastelum Cerrone is going to be no snoozer. I guarantee you that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. This fight is going to be fireworks no matter what. I mean, just having Donald Cerrone in there is going to be great, guaranteed. But, I mean, Kelvin Gastelum, man, with that last performance over Johnny Hendricks, I mean, making weight and just handling the former UFC welterweight champion like that, that was fantastic. And Kelvin certainly seems to have improved his striking a great deal. He's got the wrestling. He's still a solid talent, and he's got momentum on his side right now for sure. As does Donald Cerrone. I mean, this is still a great fight. I mean, anything's going to seem like a letdown coming from Cerrone Lawler, but this is still a very great matchup.
I think Cerrone, actually, I haven't checked to see if there's an official line, but I'm assuming Cerrone will open up a favorite on that. Let's see if they've got a line for that yet. They do. Cerrone, yep, minus 170. Gastelum plus 140. Who are you liking there?
Well, I'm liking Cerrone right now. I have to go with Donald Cerrone, honestly. I had Donald Story. I had Rick Story picked to beat Donald Cerrone in their last fight. I thought Rick Story's wrestling would be the key. Of course, Donald Cerrone does have great ground chops, but in spite of that, Donald Cerrone was able to absolutely light up Rick Story. We all saw that combo. That was just an amazing piece of work. He was able to do so well. Of course, those styles make fights. Kelvin Gastelum, definitely not sleeping on him. I mean, he has all the tools too, but I feel like, man, I could safely go with Donald Cerrone at 170. I mean, he already handled one of the larger, stronger wrestlers of the division. I mean, Rick Story is just such a beast in every aspect, in the grappling, in the striking, heavy hands, solid technique. And he had never been knocked out before. You can't knock out Rick Story. He knocked him out. Donald Cerrone is just tearing it up right now. I have to go with him. I have to.
Man, I can't go against Gastelum. I've been on Team KG since before his first fight in the Tough House. I've been on Team KG. I was the only one in the entire world who picked him against Uriah Hall in the finals of that Tough 17 show. Literally, Gastelum's own family was picking Uriah Hall in that fight. I was the only person who went with my boy Gastelum, and I see him coming home with a victory against Donald Cerrone, even though I'm a big fan of Donald's too. It's a win-win or a lose-lose, whichever way you look at it, but all I know is it's going to be a good fight. What else we got going? Man, there's just this. All right, the story around 205. If you believe it, the rumors say that Eddie Alvarez was going to get a fight against Conor McGregor, and this fight, was being signed off on and everything. Last minute, Eddie Alvarez asked for more money, and Joe Silva throws a fit. Says, "Really, you're going to try and hold us up for more money? Fuck you! You're not going to get the money fight in Conor anymore. Instead, we're going to give you Khabib Nurmagomedov. Fuck you." And that's where it stands. I've heard rumors that Conor is still going to come and save the card, and it'll be Conor versus Eddie. But it's looking like it's going to be one or the other, Eddie versus Conor or Eddie versus Khabib. I'd rather see Conor fight just because that's more exciting, and I feel like whenever Khabib takes the title, he's probably going to have it for a while, because he stylistically is a nightmare for a lot of lightweights. How do you see all this working out?
Well, it sounds just a little bullshit to me. I mean, honestly, I have zero qualms, and in fact, I'm a huge proponent of mixed martial artists getting their money. These fighters need to get paid. The only thing that I just don't really like about Eddie Alvarez saying, "Oh, I want the money fight," and then I wanting more money in the money fight. I mean, of course, Conor McGregor really seems to have changed the game as far as the ability of fighters to get a large payday. He seems to have finally commanded some, and that's really getting the fighters to kind of put their foot down, which is fantastic and something they deserve to be making so much more money than they are right now. In every organization, trust me, Bellator is not paying their fighters shit either, except for the big stars, exactly like the UFC is doing. But be that as it may, Eddie Alvarez, when he came over to the UFC, he was like the champion in Bellator, and they had a huge contract dispute because already, I mean, I want to say this was even before Conor McGregor was even blowing up in the UFC. I don't even think he fought in the UFC, and they had a big contract dispute that held him up for a long time and kept him on the shelf. I mean, because he was getting that money. So, and again, more power to him. At that point, that was, a fucked up situation. That Bellator seemed to really be holding him up because, he was trying to get paid by the UFC. So it's like, hey, you already did the contract negotiation thing. And at this point in his career, probably several times already. And we're already a big commodity when you came over. So it's just you probably had to have some sort of clauses built into your contract for championship, pay grades and things like that. It's just how many times do you need to keep going over this? I can understand both sides. Again, I want these fighters to get their money, but I can understand from an employer's perspective too. Just go with the contract you already got. I mean, how many times do you really need to redraw this thing?
Yeah, exactly. There's a balance between the fighters extorting the UFC at the last minute and the UFC being unfair to fighters, and there's always a little bit of both involved. But I think, you know what, UFC, if you wanted your fighters to not treat you like crap, it needs to go both ways, and they've treated their fighters like crap, period. Last bit of news, Rockhold Jacare 2 headlines the UFC's return to Melbourne on November 26th. Who you got in the rematch? I'm going with Jacare.
Oh my God, yeah, this fight, I want to say we touched on it when the fight announcement was made. I don't know, or maybe we might have been talking about that off the air. But I love this fight. I loved it the first time. I'm 90% sure I had picked Rockhold in that first matchup anyhow. And I mean, he beat Jacare once before. It was a super close fight, but just the fact, I mean, he did it. At least I don't think there's really a ton of skepticism on how that fight went down, but he was able to do it for. I think he can do it again. Jacare is a beast, but this, I don't know how many times I'm going to say styles make fights on today's podcast. I don't know if somebody wants to take count of that, but styles make fights, motherfucker. And Luke Rockhold, man, they're built so similarly. Very long, big 185-pounders, big dudes, great reach. And they're just both super smart, super clever. But man, I just have Rockhold by a razor thin margin.
Razor thin margin Rockhold. Let's move to this Saturday's fight. It looks like we're making good time as far as keeping it under an hour this week. Cyborg versus Landsberg. Look, I'm not gonna joke anyone. There are some names on this fight that I recognize on the prelims. It looks like let's see here. It looks like prelims. Let me scroll up. Eric Silva is fighting this no-name guy, but he's an underdog in Vegas, Luan Chagas. So keep an eye out on the fall of Eric Silva since the USADA bans came in. Husier Formiga fighting Dustin Ortiz. That'll be fun. Actually, this is a decent card. You got Gilbert Burns fighting Michael Prazeres. Mike De La Torre, a minor underdog against Godfredo Pepe. Thiago Santos, the biggest favorite on the card. Sands Cyborg fighting Eric Spicely. Paul Felder fighting Francisco Trinaldo. Any thoughts on any of those fights before we talk about the top three?
Well, as you said, I mean, this really is a solid card. It's been a nuts week over here. I knew that, I mean, the UFC, I think, for the rest of the year, there's only going to be 1 week that they don't have some sort of card popping off. So I knew that they were having one this week, but I hadn't got a chance to look at it. And certainly this is a Brazilian card and a lot of regional talent from the area. But, man, this is definitely a solid one. I mean, Husier Formiga versus Dustin Ortiz. Fantastic flyweight scrap. Ronnie Yaya.
Windstorm, cocksucker?
Oh man, it's storming over here. It's just fucking nuts left and right. The storm is a brewing out here in SoCal. I'm going to seek shelter here. But yeah, Ronnie Yaya versus Michinori Tanaka. Excellent bantamweight scrap. Loving my boy Yaya. He's just a solid talent. He's got a good 3-fight win streak going right now in the UFC. So hopefully he can stay a little more active there. And this is going to be his first year in a while that he's going to have 2 fights in 1 year. So that'll be good to see him get some action going. Godfredo Pepe, he was looking like he was on his way out, was able to salvage his career and hang on there in the UFC for a little bit. Was able to get the win streak going. He did have the setback in his most recent fight, Darren Elkins, but was able to rebound from a little 1-4 stretch there for a while. So hopefully he can get back on the positive side of things again. But going to be a tough one with Mike De La Torre. Thiago Santos, my goodness, he is just a beast here. He's coming off of a devastating knockout loss against Gegard Mousasi. But he was just really tearing it up and TKOing the hell out of everybody himself coming into this fight. I'm pretty sure that's what we're going to see when he takes on Eric Spicely here. Trinaldo, another guy who's really got a great streak going. Paul Felder, great talent. This is definitely a solid card. Maybe not the name recognition for some of the casuals, but for some of the hardcore fans, you know, they'll look at this card and realize this is pretty solid scraps from top to bottom.
Yeah, and that brings us to those top 3 fights, which all should be very fun. I talked about it very briefly before. Roy Nelson versus Bigfoot Silva. Vegas sees Nelson as a big favorite, and it's obvious why. You got Nelson with the overhand right that kills everyone, and Silva with a glass jaw. And I think that's going to be your easy solution to this fight. I think I think these 3 fights are fun to break down, but I think it's obvious in all 3 who's going to win.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, it's certainly one of those ones where never say never. I mean, hey, look at Renan Barão versus TJ Dillashaw. I mean, granted, Dillashaw was definitely looking on a different level going into that fight with Renan Barão, but still nobody was really giving him a chance. Do I think Felipe Nova is going to beat Renan Barão? Okay, I really absolutely do not. But there's a chance there. There's a chance.
Bigfoot, big country, brother.
Oh, I thought we were going over the third and second, not just.
Oh yeah, I mean, like honestly,
no,
we
terrible.
may,
oh,
we may as well, because they're both gimme fights. I mean, Barão. I thought you were
No.
about to compare
No.
Bigfoot Silva to TJ Dillashaw, and I was actually about to interrupt you and say, wow, this is the first time anyone in any sense has ever compared TJ Dillashaw to Bigfoot Silva. Two humans that their fight styles, their appearance, their everything, their size could not be any more different.
No, that's true. I think you know what it was when you had mentioned that all three of these top fights are really kind of foregone conclusions, heavy favorites, and you had talked about Roy Nelson, Antonio Silva. So then I was continuing to paint the picture with Renan Barão versus Felipe Nover.
Paint that picture, motherfucker.
No, you know what? Now I'm just that picture is crap, Jake. It's crap. It's that bullshit art that your friend does. That's like, stencil work. That's just really you were doing that shit when you were like 5 years old. That's what it's turned into. But no, I apologize. Roy Nelson versus Antonio Silva. I mean, certainly Roy Nelson has not looked his best in some time. But if there's a get right fight for him, it's got to be Antonio Silva. Gigantic head, slow lumbering bastard. Roy Nelson has a low center of gravity on him. I certainly think he is in line to smash Bigfoot fairly thoroughly.
And you thinking the same about that Barão fight, or do you think Nover's got a better chance than Bigfoot?
No, Nover definitely has a better chance than Bigfoot. No, actually, I'm just kidding. He probably doesn't. I think Bigfoot probably has a better
Vegas
chance.
actually has both of their odds very similar. They have Bigfoot plus 360, Nover plus 375.
There we go. So just by the slightest margin, I'm correct. Bigfoot just has a little bit better odds. I think just by virtue of the fact they're in the heavyweight division, anything can happen. With those bantamweights, man, Felipe Nover has to have a good game and plenty of it. We don't see a ton of stoppages at 135 pounds. I definitely see the Baron schooling Nover pretty much wherever this fight goes.
And finally, Cyborg versus Landsberg. Cyborg apparently having issues making weight. We'll see if she is able to make weight. If she isn't, her opponent Landsberg has said she won't fight her above 140. So I hope we see this fight. We'll talk about the fight first before we start talking about weight classes and all that. But obviously, this is one of not just the biggest one-sided odds lines of this card or this month or this year, but of all time. We rarely see minus 1,300 in this sport, and that's what we got with Cyborg over Landsberg. It's going to be a bloodbath.
Yeah, absolutely. It's when you have those lines, it's typically a Cyborg fight or what seems like forever ago, it used to be a Ronda Rousey fight, but throughout the years, Cyborg has just remained one of the most dominant figures in women's mixed martial arts. And really, the most dominant figure, I would say, since 2008, just by virtue of the fact, I mean, look at her record. She's just destroyed everybody that she's ever fought, really. It's amazing that they find people to actually sign up to have matches with her. I'm really not too familiar with Lena Landsberg, but you have to commend her for signing on the dotted line. I want to say she's 7-0 as a professional going into this fight. So I mean, she's got some experience in mixed martial arts. She's got that on her side. But man, my goodness, Cyborg, she's just. She's got a gnarly chin, crazy hands, crazy grappling. It's I don't know who's really going to be able to beat her. There's been some speculation over the years, but we haven't seen it happen yet, and I really don't have any reason to believe that we would see her falter come this Saturday night. I think this is. Vegas has it spot on per usual. They're usually pretty good about their picks, and this one certainly warrants the minus 1,300 line. This is just going to be a blood sacrifice.
And it brings up the question with Cyborg: should the UFC make a 145-pound division? The UFC brought Cyborg in. You've got to assume with the intentions of her hitting 135, and it's just looking like that's not going to happen. And honestly, you can't blame Cyborg. Her body just can't hit it. I mean, we've seen proof now that her body struggles very bad biologically to even get to 140. I mean, I won't, I'll spare you all the gross details. You can Google it if you want, but she had a lot of problems cutting to 140 in her last fight, and she's having a lot of problems trying to cut to 140 in this fight. I almost don't even want to see her fight Ronda at 135 because she's going to have to cut so bad and be so drawn out that she's going to be fighting with a big disadvantage. You've never had this spot where you bring in a high profile fighter and you don't have a weight class for them to fight at, so she just fights at a catch weight and crushes a bunch of bums. I mean, unless you make a 145 division, this whole Cyborg experience, I feel like, is for naught, because she's never going to make 35.
Yeah, no, that's a fairly accurate assessment. It really, I think this is just the wolf ticket situation. I mean, this is this card we have coming up this Saturday. I mean, again, this is a solid card, but mostly regional talent. This is a card, again, for the hardcore fans and for the Brazilian fans. Without Cyborg fighting as the main event, I mean, are you going to have Renan Barão versus Felipe Nova as the main event? I mean, they all seem kind of preposterous just in the main event context. Certainly you're not going to do Roy Nelson versus Antonio Silva. So Christine Cyborg, she is under contract, I want to say with, whoever the new company that purchased the UFC, I want to say, and because she was under contract with, I want to say it was Zuffa overall, because she was still fighting in Invicta, and I want to say is technically the Invicta 145-pound champion still. So she still has a home technically under the UFC umbrella, with a 145-pound weight class, and she has defended her Invicta Fighting Championship title multiple times, and so it's, do you make a 145-pound weight class and usurp what talent there may be in Invicta, bring it on in? I mean, that's what the UFC did in the first place when they created their women's divisions. But at this point, really, we were witnessing the same thing happen in Invicta with Cyborg's title defenses. I mean, these girls weren't slouches, but I mean, it's just it's tough to find a legitimate competitor for Cyborg Santos really at any weight class. So, man, I don't know what you do, whether you create a new division in the UFC or you just keep her in Invicta, maybe try and build Invicta, but I don't know why they would try and do that since they have the UFC as kind of their feeder league for the 115 pound weight classes. I mean, really, I think maybe at this point, maybe they should just create the flyweight, create the featherweight, and bring the atomweights over, bring them all over, and just start fresh with Invicta, and that's going to be the best bet. I mean, if you want to keep Cyborg Santos under the UFC banner, I think that's really what you would have to do at this point, and just really the most logical thing to do.
Yeah. I guess we'll see if we even get the fight and see in the next, see after this fight what the UFC is going to do. I think 10 belts is a lot of belts, but if you're going to expand out another weight class, 145 makes the most sense at women's 45. And I guess that's all I got. You have anything else for the people, P-Money?
I think that'll do it, my man. I'm glad we were able to get back on track for the MMA podcast.
Yeah.
A quick catch-up edition. Beautiful doing it with you. Beautiful chatting with the folks. And speaking of Invicta, we got some Invicta tomorrow night leading into the UFC. We've got Invicta tomorrow night.
Who's fighting?
Oh man, lots of females.
Lots of people.
I know that.
Girls.
All women. I can guarantee you that. Oh yes.
Invicta 19, Maya versus Matafieri. Oh, you got Roxy on the main event there, fighting Jennifer Maya. Nice.
Yeah, buddy. So it should be a lovely weekend of some fights there. Always great, Jake. Pleasure doing it with you. God bless every listener who endured this episode's podcast with all the technical bullshit, most of which was on my end. God bless you. We love you guys.
God bless you. Thanks for tuning in. We will be back next week to break down the card we just previewed. I think this is card number 6 of 9, where we got 9 straight fight weekends. Number 7, October 1st, we'll be previewing Lineker Dodson in Portland. That's going to be a fun card. Then, of course, we got UFC 204, then that Manila card with BJ Penn and Ricardo Lamas. A good month to be an MMA fan. A good month to listen to the MMA podcast. Thanks for tuning in. And until next week,
Jake. Tune into the MMA Podcast every Tuesday night.
Got the wild style, always been a foul child. Relax, sucker, I be the coming like Noah.
The MMA Podcast, Jake is the host. And since Ramsey's been in the wheelchair, the Aunt Jimmy Show has been on a roll. I wanna say John Jones is a host, so I think that I'll pick up the phone and dial 213-457-3380. We got hot takes on the show. You get blood on your clothes if you're sitting in the front row. I throw on my gi and then I lace the hoops. I'll have Yao lying down cause he ain't the truth. And if Allen wasn't a cop, I'd mention you. And shout out to Ross Finkelstein the Jew. Cause according to you, you're an MMA guru. Approved Bisbing lost his hands, Count Dooku. If you're a fancy boy, you get a 2-minute slot. Mystery wants a title shot. So listen to the MMA Podcast. Throw a high kick, but I block that. Call me Diaz, screaming George, where you at? I want the strap. But you know that I'll never tap. So listen to the MMA Podcast. Throw a high kick, but I block that. Call me Diaz, screaming George, where you at? I want the strap. And you know that I won't tap. Mystery. The MMA Podcast. Most of us just live and breathe this fighting shit. Shout out to Jake. Shout out to Jake.